Hello everyone, Naolene here, and today we are going to be ranking the heroic units of the Edain Mod. Now, there are technically four units I am missing out, but the reason I'm doing that is because they are linked to having to summon them from a power or by getting the ring. And I'm just not spending all that time trying to do all of that. I'm just getting all of the main heroic units that require you to build a building, get an upgrade, and then recruit them. There is one exception, but we'll get into that as we get to it. But let's begin. At the bottom of the list, I've put the Orokai Hunters. And some of you may be wondering, why are these here? Well, it is because they are classified as a sub-heroic unit. They're meant to be your early to mid-game Orokai unit. But frankly, I'm still putting them in here because I have a bit of beef to throw down about this unit. This used to be one of my favourite units for Isengard until it got made where they were restricted to only have 4 of these units in your faction, which really grinded my gears, but I was kind of fine with it because I'm like, okay, they've mixed things up. Isengard's finally got a heroic unit of some description. However, the thing that annoys me the most about it is the fact that you can build these mine shafts. However, by building them, you do not decrease the cost of the Orc Scouts, meaning they still cost 250 for one unit. And these units get so quickly outclassed, even when they get to level 10, when they're meant to be like super amazing units. They only then get to the point where they're about the same strength as a level 1 heroic unit. And that is unfortunately just an insult, I feel like. This unit could have so much more potential. I'm not saying bump up the stats and it will make them amazing, because yes it will, but then that will ruin the balance of the game. The most annoying thing is, trying to get to level 10 with a starting unit is not as easy as it would sound. Level 5, where you get your healing ability, does kind of bring it back, but it still doesn't make them good. I spent a good, killing these trolls back and forth for about 10 minutes, and look at how low these levels are. We're only at level 8 here and level 7 here. So this is why the Orokai Hunters, I'm only putting them here just to prove the point. They're at the bottom of the list. On to the next one. Next we have the Citadel Guard, and just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to put the Palantir Guard at this level as well, because they're technically the same units. The main reason I'm putting these guys so low, despite the fact they have actually got revenge damage that is uber tier, with both their swords and pikes, I've tested it, they keep their revenge damage even with swords. The reason they're this low down is because all they can do is switch their weapon and give a building invulnerability for 30 seconds. Which, by the way, they already have a hero that does that for an AoE. And this is a targeted ability that requires you to get level 5 to get. It is unfortunate this unit is here, because it still slaps hard, but every heroic unit slaps hard. And they need something else to give them that extra uniqueness. Because being a spear and sword hybrid unit is no longer as unique as it used to be. Anyone that has watched my channel for any amount of time will know I despise this unit, the Groffendell Wind Riders. Firstly, and in the Arnor faction, you can only get these by building the enlarged stronghold, and then recruiting Groffendell, and then you can get these 3 units. However, that is all you get from the enlarged stronghold. But I'm going to be focusing on the enlarged variant. So the variant that requires you to build forged blades, heavy armor, get your buildings to level 3, and also get horse shields. Which is not an easy thing to do. You need to use Eris's supervision on a forge to get your 2 upgrades from the forge. And then you need to get the horse shields from the green pasture. You need to get both of the military studies from the library, and then also you can get Eris's supervision to help you get the Groffendell's Wind Riders a little bit faster. But even after all of that, the biggest weaknesses about them is their formation and the abilities. So firstly, you might not notice it very much here, but I'll show it a bit more with the other cavalry units. Look how close these guys are together. You might think, oh, that's not so big of a problem, but cavalry units have a unique thing where if they charge a pike unit, they take a lot of damage. So sometimes you might have one guy on the very end who clips a pike unit, and then the guy next to him might clip the pike unit as well, and then the next guy might survive clipping the pike unit. But the amount of distance between each of these horses means that instead of just two guys clipping a pike unit, you could have three of the unit clipping a pike unit and probably get themselves all killed. And then let's go over their abilities. I'm actually going to bring up the Palantir for this so I can read them all out loud. Firstly, unyielding. They're formidable, unyielding warriors in combat and cannot be knocked down or thrown off their horses. That is okay. That means they can run out of danger no matter what. Although there are very small times, very minute possibilities that this doesn't work. I've tried testing it. So far, everything seems fine with it. But I am fairly certain there are some abilities, mostly powers, that can still knock them off their feet. One of which Imlargus has, the Breezer Monway. I can't test it on here on my own, but I'm sure at some point I will show you again and prove it. But also, Ride Like the Wind. This is possibly the worst ability in the game. Urge their mounts on. Deceleration minus 90% slower when trampling at the cost of 90% of their damage. That's not just their swinging sword damage, that is also their trample damage. I tested this against the Wildmen. Did not kill them in a charge. So basically, this is a get out of jail free card on a heroic unit, which they should not need since they have a passive that basically gives them the get out of jail free card. If you're running them into pikes, they die, so be it. But then Legend Slayers, 40% damage increase. Do you know how small that is? Their damage stat, let's put this into perspective. Their damage stat is 305. No, it's not. It's 211. I was looking at the trample stat. Sorry, it's 211. So that means this is a 80 damage increase. And comparing this to like Kurdan, who has 3,000 health. That means each of these Groffendell Wind Riders are going to be hitting Kurdan because they get an extra 20% damage. So that's 60% increase on to 211 at level 1. That means they're going to be dealing about 300, close to 400 damage once you get to level 2 per hit, per swing. And yes, they have got quite big attack speed, so it does give them a bit of an advantage in that. But Kurdan could probably kill all of these guys before they even get him to half health. If they're, not all be able to attack at once. Because that is another thing with this unit. They do struggle to get all their attacks in at once. And they do struggle with movement. There's just so many things wrong with this unit. And I think I've rambled enough about this one unit to tell you that there's just so many things wrong with it. The concept for it is fine. But I feel like a few things could be tweaked around a bit to give them a bit more of an edge. They are meant to be a heroic unit, and I'm often finding I would rather get the basic Imlargus cavalry over the Wind Riders. It's just a shame that this unit just falls off, because I used to love this unit back before Imlargus existed, back when I could only get them with Arnor. The London Guardians had so much potential, but I feel like they just kind of got left on the wayside. They have the same abilities they've had since the beginning of the game, since they were in Arnor only, and in Imladris, sadly, they just have the same things. The only main difference is their aura, which gives archers more attack power, or it gives units in melee a protection against archer damage, which is okay. But considering it's only 25% and it doesn't stack for each London Guardian, it kind of leaves you in a weird place, because this unit could have so much potential. Problem is though, it is a heroic archer unit, meaning it cannot get a archer up and arrow upgrade, so no gold thorn arrows or fire arrows if you're thinking of Arnor, which you could do something with that, I guess. But the problem is the fact that their sword mode is their only other thing, other than having a formation. They have no abilities that gives them some feel to them. They just have the ability to switch their swords or go into this formation, which gives them more damage, but they lose health. They lose armor and speed. That's all they get, which I can understand. They have got some things with the fact that Kurdan, if you get to level 10, you can then recruit these instantly. But other than that, they don't have any flavour. They are, unfortunately, just a bit of a bland unit. And for both Arnor and Imladris, I would consider building one of these if they weren't so expensive as well. I think you could take away the heroic tag on this unit, and it might make them a little bit more appealing. But there's just something missing about this unit that I feel like if the Edain team found that one thing to make this unit great, I feel like I could use this every game and never be disappointed. Next up is another elf heroic unit. They have a lot of these, by the way. Is the Merkwood Palace Guard, which they did get a nice gloss up, where they now are a spear and sword hybrid like the Citadel Guard. But unlike the Citadel Guard, they've actually got some good abilities, but sadly most of them are passive. So firstly, we have the spear variant. While next to a Merkwood building, they get the building gets armor and they get armor or damage. I'm actually going to look that up because I can't remember. It's both get armor. But in the sword variant, it's if you're near Thranduil, Legolas, or Tariel, they gain damage and the unit gains armor. And then also you've got a second ability at level 3, which is if this unit gets charged by cavalry, other Palace Guard gain more attack and armor and slows cavalry more. That's what they had in before they became a hero unit. But their sword variant is able to knock enemies down, like all of the other Merkwood units can by default when next to trees. That doesn't require them to level up. So they've got some good abilities. It is a nice bit of flavour for them. But unfortunately, it does bring them down a little bit because it is kind of looking at the same stuff they already have as their faction. But a cool thing about the swords that I didn't notice before was that enemy units can't charge through them. Now, I'm not joking. I've tried to go against some wargs. They just walked into me and then just started attacking. They couldn't walk. They couldn't run through me. And there was also a troll. The troll punched me. The troll punched a Merkwood Guardian in the chest, and it did not flinch. It did not fall back, but when it had its pike out, it did. So this so basically, the Merkwood Palace Guards have the Groffendell Wind Rider unyielding trait, but it's actually put to good use because it's being used on a unit that can block enemies instead of just being able to not fall down. Only problem is though, it's also removing the revenge damage that the spear version gets, which is something that the Citadel Guards don't need to deal with. So looking at both of these, they've both got pros and cons, and you can't really choose which is better in one situation or the other, because you're going to probably want your spears up if you're next to the buildings, just to give them more armor. But if you're fighting nothing but infantry, you'll probably just want to be on swords anyway, because that way you do more damage. Because slash damage does better against all things other than cavalry, and cavalry and monsters, and pikes only do well against cavalry and monsters. So you've really got to think between which battle type do you want more, or which one do you need more? Because it is always a toss up with this unit, which is better. You could say this is better, you could say that is better. But at the end of the day, just use one and you'll probably get good use out of whichever one you choose. The Shadow Guard, just like the rest of Angmar, is a bit of a double-edged sword. Their abilities are quite unique in that they don't really play the same role as other parts of Angmar have, where they actually play a bit of a support role. Firstly, their attacks by a passive effect reduces enemy damage by 50%. However, if you use their first ability, you instead remove that debuff and instead give a heal effect in an AoE to your units, which I think is pretty cool. And then as a passive, it then also affects heroes and heals them for even more. Only problem is, when you're using that, you're lowering your armor. So that's what I mean by Angmar double-edged sword. And then lastly, you've got an ability that gives your hero, or a certain hero, a big buff. But if that hero dies, the Shadow Guard just instantly kill themselves in an act of what Angmar does, basically. Angmar does what Angmar does. And yes, those abilities are good. They're obviously going to have their downsides because of how good they are. But you also need to know when best to use them. If you're in a situation where you need the healing, then you should get the healing. But that doesn't mean you're actually going to heal your units, because the Shadow Guard actually have to hit something to do it. And they're likely also going to get hit back if they are the ones doing any hitting. So they are going to die faster if you're not taking care of them. And the same goes kind of for the Dark Knights, the other heroic unit for Angmar, which I haven't got because I'm not going for the tier 4 power. But if I did, I probably would have put them right next to the Shadow Guard because they've got the exact same abilities, just on horses, which gives them some advantages, which will put them a little bit higher, but that's about as good as it gets for them. These guys are still good though, quite easy to get, but definitely a unit that you should consider using maybe just one of, and then get the others when you've got the money for them. Because one thing about Angmar is, once you get into the mid-game, your economy drains very quickly because you're spending a lot more on your units. And without more tributes to keep farming it, then you are going to fall behind a little bit with your economy. You've got to be careful with those little things. We've now reached the middle of the list, and we have the Guardians of Karis Galathon, which I would have ranked higher if it weren't, again, for their abilities. Cloak, which means as long as they stand still, they are invisible. That does not stop them from getting trampled, by the way. And then an ability that reduces their damage to allow them to knock back their enemies on hit. I'm just going to give that a second to sink in. Because, yeah, those abilities, although they were nice when the faction first came out, they do need a bit of a gloss up, I think. To give them a little bit of a gloss up, change that ability to, I don't know, do more damage, maybe. That could be nice. More damage, more range, because, you know, the range on these guys is pretty nutty if you get the right things. You can have it where you can have one standing on this corner and shooting something from off the map on the other corner, which I have done. I have proven it. It can happen, and it is a sight to behold. It is worth doing it. This unit can do some massive slapping damage, but you do need to protect them. You do need to protect them. Compare them to Galathrim, and actually, Galathrim are more expensive to get Silverthorn arrows with than just getting these Guardians of Karis Galathon. But that is again another thing. Galathrim are twice the unit. I'm going to stop there. It's a good unit. Could do some little improvements to set it up to standard with everything else that's been coming out recently. But that's just my opinion. Next we have the Rohan Royal Guard. And I can understand a lot of people might get a little bit mad about this one. Being like, oh my god, the Royal Guard are amazing. Why you've put them so low? Well, the reason is because of their abilities. I'm sorry, but giving a cavalry unit an ability to help them do more damage to pikemen is just a recipe for disaster. Not only that, then the other ability gives them, let's just read this. For 30 seconds, they slow less when trampling and move faster, but have 50% less armor. That means they're going to be taking a hell of a lot more revenge damage, which is something you do not want on a cavalry unit. Another thing to mention is, this is Rohan, who already has a list of different cavalry units you can choose from. And these ones require as much dedication as the Groffendell Wind Riders do. You need heavy armor, forged blades, horse shields, and also the arsenal on the stables, because that's the only way you can get this unit. Because you also need the horse shields from the arsenal, and you also need the arsenal on the building to get it done. But I will not deny this is still a strong unit. Has the same stats as all other heroic cav. Really good. But again, it's from Rohan, where cavalry is king. These might be the top, but there's so many other cavalry units in between this and all of that. It's better to get them over this one. But I can see it. I can see people wanting to use this unit just for the flavour, which I cannot deny. It is pretty fun to try and get into level 10 for the extra buff on the heroes. For my number 5 spot, I have chosen the Castellans of Dol. Now, a weird thing about this unit is that it doesn't get trampled like units, because it is classed as a hero battalion. Now, I don't know if that's what it's officially called or what. That's just what it says on the unit itself when you hover over it. It says hero battalion. It is still classified as a heroic unit. But the weird thing is, because of their size, they don't actually get trampled by cavalry or monsters as they're moving through them. Even though they do actually have a revenge stat, which is a bit of a weird one. But anyway, their abilities are really good. You've got a aura AoE from where they're standing from, which does poison damage, and not just like little poison damage like the Dol Orcs. This poison damage slaps like the plague for Angmar. It is really good, really good. And then on top of that, after you use that ability, you then get a 50% damage and armor boost, which is amazing, because all you have to do to use it, all you have to do to activate it, is find a patch of land you've not already poisoned. And then at level 5, they become immune to all elemental damage, magic, and poison. It may not sound like a lot, but a lot of things in this game do use those effects. They become immune to Silverthorn arrows, technically. Not against the extra pierce damage they have, but the magic damage applied from the Silverthorns is ignored. They basically ignore all elemental, so fire arrows. Haven't tested it, but maybe they'll be able to survive things from the Balrog. There's a lot to think about when you read it, but in reality, it is still really good. And all you need to get them is build Dol Guldur. They don't have any other requirements, which gives them so much. One big weakness though about them is that they stand out like a sore thumb in Mordor, because next to them are just going to be hordes of orcs, which make it only up to their midsection. So they're just going to stand out, and your enemy archers are going to have a field day killing these things. So get them in melee. Make sure anything that is archer based is killed by one of the better heroic units for Mordor, or you can hopefully survive the onslaught, because these guys, unfortunately, they are tanks in melee, but when it comes to ranged, they don't really do that well. For number 4, I have chosen the Veterans of Khazadum. Now, there is so much to unpack about the Veterans of Khazadum. Firstly, you technically get 4 of these units if you send one of them to the Foundry, which then allows you to give all of your Dwarven heroes Mithril Mail, which is it's a 500 resource cost upgrade for your heroes, just to make them even stronger, even harder to kill, which is already putting them way above so many other units. Secondly, you get to customize their weapon type. As you can see here, I've gone double axes on this one. I've gone morning stars and shields with this one. And I've gone hammers and shields with this one. Now, I would go into all the details about what you can do with each, but I'll just say it quickly. Axes do more damage against everything, so you want them typically just to do the most slash damage. Hammers do good damage against buildings, so if you're feeling I don't have enough damage against buildings, get the hammers. Otherwise, go axes. You have morning stars, which do more damage against heavy armored troops. So if a unit has purchased heavy armor, you now have Orok damage, which does bonus damage to units with heavy armor. If you're fighting against a faction that doesn't have heavy armor, go axes instead. And then you have swords, which does only bonus damage versus heroes and does less damage against everything else. So unless you're fighting heroes, you should, guess what? Go axes. It kind of is the illusion of choice, really. Because looking at the straight numbers, axes are the best thing to go for with the veterans of Khazadum. And then you've got the choice of shields or axe. An axe is a 50 damage, just a 50 flat damage increase. So it will go up by the percentage of your stats, and it is boosting it to your overall stats. So instead of, say, 200, you get 250. But you also need to consider that shields change the armor stat for the dwarves from infantry armor to heavy infantry armor. So the only real difference that makes, because it's not giving them extra health, it's not giving them any extra boost like heavy armor does, all the shield does is make it so archer damage does less, and instead of taking more damage from chop damage, you take more damage from Orok damage. So it's all about what faction you're playing against. Do they have Orok damage? If not, you should consider getting shields. But if you just want to do flat out damage, you're probably gonna want the axes. And some factions that have, say, like trolls and prioritize heroes, you won't want axes. You will or shields. You'll just want axes for the flat damage, even. But yeah, it's just doing all these different combinations, trying everything together, is what makes this unit so much fun, because of the variations you get to choose. It is a bit of illusion of choice in a way, because as I said, flat numbers don't lie. The axes are what you want against nearly everything. But if you want to go do damage against buildings, you go hammers, heavy armor, Orok, heroes, sword. But if you don't, if you decide afterwards you want to change it, you're gonna have to kill the unit and get another elite unit, another pony unit, put them together, wait a bit, they comes back again, you start again. And then you lose all the experience you gained from them. And they have some pretty damn good abilities. They have immunity to knockback and slowing down cavalry even more. So similar to the Merkwood Palace Guards, but on an activated ability. And then they get a mega attack damage boost, but then lose a little bit of armor. But that's typical of the veterans from what they were in vanilla. So yes, Khazadum vets are definitely worth the number 4 slot, but they do lose to the next 3 units because of their abilities and power and capabilities. Let's get to number 3. The Mogul Riders are definitely deserving of the number 3 slot. They may not have any activatable abilities, but their 2 passive abilities give them so much strength behind them. As long as a Nazgul is present in their vicinity as they're trampling, they lose 40% less, they decelerate 40% less. And that doesn't mean you have to be charging around with the Nazgul. The Nazgul could just be fighting in melee somewhere else. The Mogul Riders show up, they just trample them, and it's a free reduction in deceleration, which is amazing for a unit that can just quickly go in and out into your Orc Horde and then come back around again, circle round, in and out. Really difficult to deal with. And this works on any Nazgul. It doesn't have to be any particular Nazgul. It doesn't have to be the Witch King. It doesn't have to be Kamul, the Shadow Lord, the Dark Marshal, or the Black Riders. It could be any of them. And then at level 6, which might be hard to get, but if it does, this unit turns from just being a cavalry unit to a single target, a single entity hero unit in a fashion. Because what happens when it turns to level 6? They turn into a spirit of the shadow world, which is also the effect you get from the Mogul blade, which I wish I had gotten the thing to show it. But if you use Influence of Sauron on Minas Morgul, that means these spirits can turn into wretched wraiths, which, if you haven't seen them, they are a really powerful single target entity that has about 2000 HP, about the same damage as the Knights of Minas Morgul. But then also, as they take damage, they heal the Nazgul around them. So it's perpetuating the circle of life, or I guess unlife in this fashion, where the Nazgul just exist. The Mogul Riders become stronger by the Nazgul existing, and then as they die, they aren't done. They continue to serve the Nazgul by even more dangerous means, by becoming single entities that have next to no command point cost, so you can just bring out the Mogul Riders again, and then just keep going on and on and on. This unit is such a threat. It's such a scary threat because all you need is the Minas Morgul outpost, and then 1600, wham bam, you can get one of these units, and they just crush everything. There's very little that can survive them, and with the extra deceleration reduction, it just means that they can just keep doing what they're good at over and over and over again, and it is a beast to deal with. Very little can deal with this, and the fact that they are technically Mordor's only streamlined cavalry unit, people don't expect this from Mordor. At least I don't sometimes. I just go full infantry against them until I start seeing trolls, and I might get a few pikes out. But if I don't expect a Minas Morgul, I might not even notice this unit coming in and just flattening my entire army before it's too late. For the number 2 slot, we have the NATO Dolumroth. I have sang the praises of this unit so many times when I'm playing as Gondor. Every time I try to find an outpost, build a border stronghold, get Imrahil, who is an amazing hero for Gondor in general, and then just on top of it, the icing on the cake, you get the Knights of Dolumroth. Amazing unit, perfect trample capabilities. Imrahil boosts them into the stratosphere. All of Gondor just boosts them to the stratosphere. You've got plenty of heroes to work with them, and their passive ability to get at level 5 boosts all other cavalry, which on paper is amazing. But not only that, if you're playing multiplayer, you're playing co-op with your friends, and they make cavalry as well. If you've got a Rohan, you're just boosting Rohan's capabilities even more with this unit. It is so good. How this unit is so good. I love it. I love this unit and everything about it, because it has just been done so well. Their abilities are amazing, because one of them is a trample effect, which you can use from across the map, not across the map even, across the screen, which just gives you a flat boost. It's not like with Rohan where you lose armor. It's not like in Lardris where you lose the damage of your trample. You just get to keep everything. And then at level 10 you have the perfect little bit of extra, which is you can't trample, big whoop, you got 50% damage and armor now. You just get to keep slashing at whatever's in your way. And if you top that off with Imrahil, who gives them healing with each attack, and then you've also got the Atheling Guard, so you can keep using this discipline power over and over and over again. this unit can be almost unstoppable. Their only weakness is just getting knocked down or fighting pikes. Those are their only two weaknesses. I can't think of anything else this unit is weak to. Heroes just get melted. And also, as I mentioned before, the Groffendell Wind Riders, look at the gap between these guys. If this guy gets hit, there's a good chance this guy is not going to get hit. Or if you run into pikes, there's a good chance this unit doesn't get... only two get hit by clipping pikes. It's so important that these units are so well spread out, because it just gives them more opportunities to not get screwed by just existing. And oh my god, if it weren't for this other unit, this would have been my top unit by so much. But here we go, number one spot. Surprise, surprise, it's the veterans of the last alliance. Oh, what can I say about this unit? Firstly, their passive ability from level 1. This unit can reach level 20, which you may think, oh okay, so if you spend all this time doing this and this and this, you can get all this amazing power, big whoop. How are you going to get to level 20 easily? There's quite a few ways. Firstly, Sanctuary of Knowledge. Experience and ability cooldowns are reduced by 25%. This unit has an ability which stacks with their other two units, so you're incentivized to have all three on the field at the same time. Masterful example. Allied units gain 50% combat experience for 30 seconds. If you have a creator hero like Terrence over here, who also has earns experience twice as fast and great train allies, you can do this without needing to fight anything. You can just do it. And then you have an ability that evolves, that grows as you get stronger. It starts off as double damage at the cost of 50% speed. When you're in a melee, you're going to have a long time of that double damage. And considering that with each level, that damage just keeps getting higher, it's not a percentage amount, it is literally double. So, I'm going to get some stats out here. Veterans of the Last Alliance, their damage at level 1 is 255 slash damage. They get a total of a 174% increase to their damage when they reach level 20. It starts at 10% for the first few levels, then it goes to 8, then it goes to another 10, and then it goes to 8 again. And eventually it just totals up to around 174%. It's not exactly that, but that's what it's predicted as by the Edain team's wiki. This is where I got all this data from, which is what I've ranked them on. And from 1,850 HP, they've got somehow 7,815. Something tells me the percentages aren't quite what they seem. I think there might be some foul play here, because there's definitely no way that 1,850 HP plus 174% makes 7,000. I don't think so. Something happened in the stat bin that just made this go off the charts. And by the way, as a unit levels up, it's not just their slash damage that improves, their revenge damage improves as well. I have tested it. A troll walked into this unit and it just died, as if it was running into a unit of pikes. It just looked at us, walked towards us, we walked towards it, we stared at each other for a second, he stuck his toe on our toe, and he fell over. Let's get this into perspective. Kurdan at level 1 has 3,500 HP, and these guys have double that at level 20. It is ridiculous what you can do with this faction to make it so you get 175% experience gain. And if you go against a unit of Men of Khazadum, this is where I first got my level 20 veterans of the Last Alliance. All three masterful examples. Sanctuary of Knowledge. One unit of Men of Khazadum walked into a level 1 veteran of the Last Alliance, and the veterans came out of the battle level 10. So I don't think I could do any more math. My throat is killing me. Let's just say this. This unit is amazing. It takes a lot of setup and dedication to make it work. But when you do, you get, at the end of it, at level 20, this unit does triple damage. Becomes immune to knockback and trampling. And they gain 50% armor. That is impossible to kill. If they had the space to do it, they would say, when you use this ability at level 20, this unit is the strongest unit in the game, because that is exactly what happens. If this unit had any kind of like magic damage, they could kill the Balrog. I am not joking. I 100% believe this unit could kill the Balrog of Morgoth and come out of it at only half health. That is what I believe. And now I am done. That is everything. I hope you've all enjoyed this. I've put a lot of time into preparing this. I wanted to put in the other heroic units that I didn't have time for, which was the Shadow Knights for Angmar and the 2 dragon units for the Misty Mountains. But the thing is, they take a lot. It takes a lot of time to get to the tier 4 powers. And honestly, if I was to rank the dragons, it'd be quite low, because they unfortunately aren't that good when looking at them. After looking at them, the main thing you get from that power is the Dragonflight ability. And the Shadow Knights, as good as they are, I would have still ranked them low, just because they kind of have the same problem as the Groffendell Wind Riders. They kind of clump up a bit too much. And their abilities are the same as the Shadow Guard, so I would keep them at the same pace anyway. So if you've all enjoyed this, and I will see you all for the next one. Farewell.